Hello, I'm Ted Powers with Paragon Global Consulting, and thanks for joining us today. We're going to spend the next few minutes talking about how the so-called Amazon effect has changed the nature of the U.S. containerboard business. Specifically, we're going to focus on the structural change in demand we've seen from the rise of e-commerce. Now, first, let's have a look at historical containerboard demand in the United States. We see here that total containerboard demand took a big hit during the Great Recession. But since then, total demand has recovered and is back above the level it was prior to the recession. And since 2010, total demand's grown about 1.6% each year. But after studying this for a while, we've been able to isolate the impact of e-commerce sales from the core demand for containerboard. And what we have found paints a very striking picture of the evolution of demand. Now, in this chart, we focus only on the core demand for containerboard. You can see that nearly 2.5 million tons of demand from traditional channels was destroyed during the Great Recession. While demand is growing again, it's growing from a much smaller base and at a pretty anemic rate of about 0.5% per year. Before we move away from this view, let me note that the underlying data series we used in this analysis measures the production output of consumer non-durable goods. So it's not affected by the value of the goods themselves. And we think this gives a more accurate picture of true demand for containerboard. Now, of course, there are other uses of containerboard besides non-durable goods, but we're using this series as a representative of that core demand. Think of it this way: what we're really measuring here is the demand for individual packages. In our analysis, we've been able to sort out the unique demand created specifically through the use of e-commerce sales channels. And as we see in this chart, the so-called Amazon effect has created more than 3 million tons of new annual containerboard demand in the US alone. The steepness of this curve is clear, and we see that since 2010, demand from e-commerce has grown at nearly 11% per year. Again, let me address the underlying series we used for this analysis. The data informing this chart measures retail sales of goods from online shopping and mail order houses. Sales from online services like travel and financial sites are excluded from this series. And we think this gives a clearer picture of the demand for boxes created by e-commerce sales. So when we look at traditional channels and e-commerce on the same chart, the dramatic evolution of demand is striking. E-commerce now represents more than 5 million tons per year of containerboard demand and represents more than 80% of all US containerboard volume growth. So without the boost from e-commerce, the US containerboard market would be much worse off than it is today. So what does all this mean? Well, the change in the structural demand for containerboard is really a tale of both opportunity and threat. The opportunity is clear in that the rise of e-commerce sales has created an additional use of corrugated packaging for the last mile of delivery. Think of it this way: many of the items that used to be transported to our homes in the back seats and trunks of our cars are now being delivered to our front porches in a box. The vast majority of growth in containerboard is coming from this increased use of packaging. Containerboard demand from e-commerce is more than 5 million tons per year in the US and is growing at 11% per year. So those companies who can articulate a clear and compelling value proposition to e-commerce retailers have a good chance to win. But the threats should be equally as clear. The core demand for corrugated packaging in the US that is represented by the demand from production of consumer non-durable goods was hit hard by the Great Recession. And while that core demand is growing again, it's growing very slowly and from a base that is about 10% lower than before the recession. As packaging and shipping costs become more impactful on their P&L statements, e-commerce retailers will look for ways to trim that cost. And as the volume of corrugated used in e-commerce continues to grow, larger online retailers may look to vertically integrate their box needs. Now, before you think that sounds too far-fetched, remember that Amazon now owns 50 cargo planes and 20,000 vans to ship and deliver packages, posing a clear threat to companies like FedEx and UPS. So understanding how this structural change in containerboard demand poses both an opportunity and a threat for your business in the years ahead should be a critical part of your strategic planning process. If you'd like to talk with us about this or any other issue related to strategy, finance, or operational excellence, just give us a shout or shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you, and we welcome the opportunity to learn more about your business. Thanks for your time and attention, and have a great day.